I think some of the most interesting questions that are facing the fintech and kind of the established banks are questions around data, how that data is used. Is it the consumer's data? Is it the fintech's data? Is it the bank's data? And ultimately, how is a customer in control of their data, right? Where they have transparency in terms of where it's going, and they can control it, right? Whether it's on a temporal basis, that I only want to expose my data for a certain period of time while I'm trying to get a loan, or I only want to expose certain account information, but I don't think a lot of people understand how much information when they provide their account credentials, which I still can't understand why customers do this, but when they give their account credentials to somebody else, like a third party who might be trying to give them a loan or is helping them see kind of a common view of aggregate all of their different kind of financial positions across different banks, that same credential is incredibly powerful. It wasn't as important 20 years ago when all you could do was pull a report like you could pull out of the trash. But today, increasingly, you can move money right out of these accounts. And so really thinking about, is it appropriate for consumers to be sharing that kind of information? How can the industry come together in a way that helps consumers better control and understand that? I think is going to be important. And that is collaboration between regulators, banks, fintechs, coming together to find a solution so that everybody can go forward. I think one of the other areas that's interesting is, again, this is the use of data. But so much of what you've seen with fintechs is their creative use of data, right? And the banks for a long time, and for a good reason, regulators have asked us to really look at broad segments of the US population to avoid discriminatory practices or disparate outcomes, where they don't want us using certain pieces of information that might actually be very valuable in assessing somebody's risk to extend them credit. But there's a public policy objective in terms of making credit more accessible. And so I think that there's a really interesting question, is playing on a level playing field where the bank should be able to underwrite under the kind of the same restrictions and opportunities that a fintech should be able to. And sometimes that isn't necessarily the case, right? So where you have a lot of fintechs striving after creating what I'll call underwriting of the actual individual and using the power of technology and data to create a customized pricing and underwriting decision for that individual. And then the banks, where we're still really doing it on a segmented basis. So you could be one of 2 or 3 or 4 personas that we underwrite against, versus Braden Moore, who works at Wells Fargo, who's 42 years old, with this kind of credit score. Some of this information we can use, some of it you can't, in making that underwriting decision. So, traditionally, the banks, first of all, we're large and we have a huge impact. So we receive a lot of the regulatory, oversight and scrutiny. And that when regulators are trying to achieve a certain public policy objective, whether we believe in it or not personally, it makes sense for them to be connected with the large banks and trying to exercise that, right? With some of the smaller, more nimble folks, sometimes they may not even be on their radar screen, or they may be on the radar screen but not really of the size where they're interested in acting quite yet. Because one of the other things that they have to balance is a desire to have competition, a desire to have innovation, as well as to have a system that is secure and predictable and safe for individuals. So it's a balancing act, and I think over time they get it right.